It doesn't seem to matter where you turn, so many people are distracted these days. Walking through a store, waiting in line, commuting in traffic. Just watch, we're regularly glancing heads down at the palm of our hands, scrolling through social media, text messages, emails, and who knows what else online. Oh, and our kids. Yeah, our kids are by far the most digitally connected, which leaves many parents fearing that their children are also becoming disconnected from reality. According to the latest research, the average 13-year-old spends between 8 and 9 hours a day, 7 days a week, glued to their phone. And for many families, the digital disconnection from parents and kids sharing actual FaceTime together has passed the point of being a problem. So seeking some simple solutions to reconnecting with our digitally disconnected kids is what we're talking about on this episode of the Raising Them Ready podcast for parents. Here we encourage and support parents who are doing the best they know how to raise their kids to become confident, capable, and kind in what feels like an ever-changing and often unpredictable world. I'm your host, Jonathan Catherman. I'm a family man, career sociologist, and best-selling author of a series of life skills and character-building titles for tweens, teens, young adults, and parents, including the Raising Them Ready book, which, thanks to the requests of our readers, has also become the Raising Them Ready podcast. As I mentioned, simple solutions to reconnecting with your digitally disconnected kids is what this episode is all about. So it's a good thing that's what my guest Thomas Kersting does every day. As a nationally recognized psychotherapist, author, and television personality, Tom explores the device-dependent world our kids live in and how tech is affecting their mental and emotional well-being. In his professional therapy practice, Tom deals daily with how the cyber world is rewiring kids' brains and affecting their ability to flourish in the real world as anxiety, depression, and attention issues soar. Thankfully, Tom is here to assure us that it's not too late to help our kids escape the attention monopoly popular technology seeks in their young lives. Tom is dedicated to sharing some simple strategies to reducing screen time while increasing mindfulness in the ways that help parents help their kids reclaim their time and attention together as a family. So welcome to a digital device required yet critical conversation with Thomas Kersting about reconnecting digitally disconnected families in ways that helps parents raise confident, capable, and kind kids. Tom, let's dive into this conversation about helping kids navigate this anti-social media. I like how you've phrased that, anti-social media, and look for some actual ways we can help our kids stay off their phones. Now, I'm going to use phones as air quotes because I don't think our kids are on their phones that much. They're on their devices all the time because they rarely ever use it as a phone.
Yeah, right.
Why do these devices have such a hold on our kids? What is the grasp?
Yeah, so all of these products, the social media products, the video games that are developed, it's not like, my Space Invaders when I was playing Atari when I was little, right? That didn't have a grip on your brain. All of these products are literally designed to target the pleasure-seeking part of the brain. And that's the part of the brain that produces dopamine, which is the feel-good chemical, right? So dopamine is associated with every addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, and so forth. So our kids are literally getting a never-ending, all-day long IV drip of dopamine. And guess what happens when the stimulus, in this case, the phone or the video game system or whatever the electronic device is, when that's removed, there's an absolute withdrawal and crash that manifests itself behaviorally, verbally, and physically.
Well, how quick can that come on? If I say, let's put the phones down, and the child immediately responds with, no, it's not fair. I mean, you're not talking about a dopamine drip. It's like pinching off the line and all of a sudden they're starving for that high. How long does it take before they get the itch? Like, I got to get back on the device.
Well, they're on these things for, depending on the research you look at, 9 or 10 hours a day, right?
That's a full-time job.
Yeah. And it's starting, when I'm lecturing, I'll say, let's say, for example, the group of parents, I'll say, raise your hand if you think it's smart for an 11-year-old to have a smartphone. Nobody has ever raised their hand in all the lectures I've done. Yet the average age of first smartphone issuance is 10 years old. So we all do it, even though we know it's a bad idea. So what happens, the brain has a natural balancing act so that you don't get too much dopamine or too little. It's called homeostasis. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's through evolution when, things were scarce thousands of years ago. But now it's like the scale is completely tipped. from this constant seeking of dopamine that they don't even know they're seeking. And like I said, when that's removed, there's an absolute crash. So to rebalance, for the brain to naturally rebalance itself, takes about 30 days.
I can hear parents saying right now, 30 days without a cell phone, you got to be kidding me. My kids would die.
Here lies the problem, right? So if a parent is going to go up to a 15 or 16-year-old and say, that's it, I'm taking a phone away for 30 days, the kid is going to go ballistic. I see this all the time. But with each week, over the course of 30 days, they sort of come back to earth again and become human again. But it's getting over that initial hump. So the best thing we could do is really start by reducing it, parenting up.
Again, parents are thinking there is no way I'm taking away my 12-year-old cell phone. That would just bring hell to our home.
Yes. I mean,
and not for 30 days. That's just impossible. Give me something I can actually do starting today that will help.
Right.
With less screen time and more face and family time.
Yes. So here's a couple things right off the bat. Number one, for us parents, we have to practice what we preach. Number one, because we're spending just as much time on these devices when we're at home. So like the family is like, mom is on her phone, dad's on a computer, Johnny's in the basement playing his video game, and Sarah's up in her bedroom doing her stuff, right? So that family unit is not really intact. No, it's just not.
We're under the same roof, but we're not engaging with each other.
Right. It's like 4 individuals that call themselves a family living under the same roof, but living an isolated life. That's literally what's going on. So that's number one. We got to practice what we preach. Number two, we got to reestablish the family dinner. So, and if we can't do that because we have both parents working, it's critical that parents gather their kids, and every single evening we have family time for at least 15 minutes without any distractions, right? Where we're just conversing. That's just critically important. The relationship that a child has with their parents is the most important thing for their mental and emotional outcomes. And you can't have a relationship if there's no dialogue. And that includes even rides to and from the school. You look in a rearview mirror, every kid in the passenger seat is on their device, and there's no dialogue. The next most important thing, in my opinion, maybe the most important, is literally 95% of kids, middle schoolers and high schoolers, have their devices in their bedrooms with them at night. When I used to work at a public high school, I retired 4 years ago. And that last year, I surveyed 100 kids that knew me and trusted me. And I asked them the following question. I said, what time do you go to sleep on school nights? And 92 or 93 of them told me that they went to sleep between 1 and 4 a.m. every night of the school week, and that their parents had no idea.
And then they're having to get up just a few hours later to go to school.
Yeah, and we have a sleep deprivation epidemic, which is, that alone is going to cause a major anxiety and, depression symptoms and so forth. So that's number one. And, even if you have a kid that's 16 and they've been allowed to have the phone in the bedroom at night, that's the starting point. Sorry. And they're going to give you a hard time. Nobody said parenting was easy.
Right.
What I mean? Sure, they're going to give you a hard time. And that's, what the call is, that's the call to parenting. It's not supposed to be a smoothly paved road.
One of the statements you talked about, kids on the car rides to school. Mm-hmm. And I know you've said, look, that's a great place to have family time. Well, if it's a 5-minute car ride, I did the math. If it's a 5-minute car ride for 180 days, you just gained 15 hours of FaceTime with your kids. And if your car ride's 10 minutes, you just got 30 hours back with your family.
Yeah. And if that's back and forth, that's 60 hours, right? My daughter is, I drive her to high school. The high school is 15 minutes away. I drive her every day, and we have conversations. Sometimes she doesn't want to talk, but we have great conversations, and we connect. And it's to me is so darn important, even to sports, events and so forth.
Yeah.
We gotta get our kids out of this fog. Parents have to really we got to just kind of zero in and take a look around and see what's happening and reclaim our kids.
Someone else has gained and is retaining their attention.
Yep.
And in turn, they're also sharing with their kids the shoulds and shouldn'ts, the do's and don'ts of life. And that's our role as parents.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, kids are, their beliefs, their realities, all right, what they think is fact is what they get on TikTok.
Man, do you feel the same way? Like the ceiling has been lifted in what quality looks like. Like, this is how great my life is. That is unachievable. It's so high. Yeah, we've also dropped to the basement our disbelief. So we've got kids that have their disbelief is as low as it can go, but their expectations are so high it can't be achieved, which leaves this gigantic space in the middle that they're trying to live in. How can anybody feel like they have personal self-esteem when they're living in that vacuum?
Yeah, that's what I talk about in my lectures. I have a section that's called Cyber Self-Esteem, and I talk about the word self-esteem and the importance of the word self.
Mm.
right? Particularly for kids. You take, like, to your point, you take like a middle school, an adolescent. So what is adolescence? Adolescence is this limbo purgatory stage, right? Where you're not a child and you're not an adult. And in that stage of development, um, with that comes a lot of issues, which are normal. Insecurity, you look weird, you're trying to figure out where you fit in. So insecurity is what adolescence is. But now you layer in, the highlight reel that our kids are viewing of all of their quote friends, right? And how great everybody else's life is in that vulnerable mind during adolescence. And over time, the gradual mindset of that child is as follows: everybody else's life is so wonderful and perfect. My life really stinks.
So here we have kids. Let's say you've got a 10-year-old at home. I can guarantee that there's parents with 10-year-olds who are hearing this all the time. All of my friends have a phone.
Yep.
When do I get my phone? Actually, so there's some parents out there going, my 8-year-old's saying that to me right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You're not
When's the right time for a kid to get a device?
Yeah, so that's a question that comes up all the time, right? So when I'm lecturing, parents will say, what is the appropriate age, right? So the answer is really late adolescence, but the answer I give is this. It's a little bit of a kind of an eye opener when they ask that question: what is the appropriate age? My answer is when you feel comfortable with them watching adult content, if you know what I mean.
Mm. Wow. Okay. That throws out the whole concept that it's about maturity and not age. What you're saying is it's about accessibility and not age.
Yeah, I mean, you take a 12-year-old boy, and they're on their phone on social media, and you get all these pop-ups, and all of a sudden some attractive woman pops up, which is going to happen. You think that kid's not going to click on that? And he could get very easily dragged down this very dark path. So I think that right there is a little bit of a, okay, I get it moment, when I say that for parents.
In addition to just their pestering and asking and comparing, we also have to ask ourselves as parents, how prepared have we readied our children to see the whole world? Because that's what they have. They have excess access to information in the palm of their hand at all times. And
yeah, they're doom scrolling, getting sucked in the algorithms of TikTok and YouTube, for example. It's one video after the next. It's endless content. But the problem, it's not so much what they're consuming, right? It's what they're not doing, which is being, right?
Yeah.
So we are human beings, meaning we need silence. We need to take a breath of air. We need to think on our own. We need to problem solve and analyze. But if we're never present and we're always distracted, then we never discover the self part of self and the being part of human.
Okay, so let's take that to the dinner table. I like that you mentioned earlier, bring the dinner table back. That was always a standard in our home.
Oh, yeah.
We ate at least one meal together as a family every day. And there was no cell phones allowed at the dinner table. And every now and then one of my sons would sneak the cell phone in there and we'd say, well, who'd you invite to dinner with you?
Yeah.
Here's the problem I see a lot of families have. They don't even eat dinner together because they don't have the time. There's so much going on. There's work schedules and sports schedules and club schedules and music schedules. And it's just it feels like we're just ships passing constantly. Yeah. So you're advocating for this isn't just the practice of the cell phone, it's the practice of the family spending time together minus their devices. So you're talking about really two things here: bring the family closer and the phones and technologies further away from that family time.
Yeah, so I have a citation in the book in Disconnected where the average parent nowadays spends just 3.5 minutes per week in meaningful conversation with their children. So when you take the dinner table as an example, families that do, have regular, most nights of the week have dinner together, uninterrupted or undistracted. Some of the stats, it shows that the kids that are in those kinds of families are more likely to excel academically, are less likely to develop a mental health disorder, are less likely to engage in drug and alcohol use, are less likely to engage in early sexual behavior, and are more likely to be successful in life by age 30 than their peers that don't have that time around the dinner table with their families. And if you can't do dinner because everybody's busy, then carve out 15 minutes a night, even if it's at 9 o'clock at night, where everybody's home and everybody stops what they're doing, and we get together and be, and have conversations and connect with one another. That's what a family is.
We did that as a family in that at times, in addition to like dinner time, I just find what my kids are interested in and I
Yeah.
just join in what they're interested in. It didn't have to matter if I was interested in it or not, just interested in what my sons wanted to do. So we've done everything from, wrench on cars to write music because that's what they were interested in.
You talk to any individual about what they're interested in, and you'll have a conversation that'll go on forever.
Right, right. Okay, so I spent a lot of time in schools with administrators and educators where they say one of their biggest pet peeves is the parents won't back the school up when it comes to the tech rule at school. So no cell phones in the classroom unless assigned, and yet kids are using their phones. They get in trouble. The phone gets quote unquote taken away. Next thing you know, you've got a parent calling the school, ranting and raving about their kid's phone got taken away, whereas it was the child who essentially disobeyed the school rule.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So I just did a lecture, one of the lectures I did last week. A guy, during the Q&A, some dad did his own sort of survey among parents about the idea of banning phones from entering the school, which if I was in charge of the United States education system, there would be no phones entering the school building, period. Okay. I'll get into that in a minute. But interestingly, in this guy's, survey that he did, he was shocked because he's on board with that. And only 17% of parents are on board with that. And the reason is that this device has become what I call the umbilical cord between parent and child. Parents need to know everything their kids are doing. What if there's an emergency? All this other stuff, right? Which is all just not really a reality. I was reading recently where England just now have banned phones from entering the school, period. Because you can do whatever school does, you got to turn your phone in or you can't have your phone on. The kids circumvent that. Even if you have to turn your phone in, they turn their old phone in and have their new one in their pocket. And you don't know it. But even in the classroom, I give an example at my lectures. I was doing a lecture several years ago somewhere out west. I think it was a teacher's professional development. And a teacher shared something with me. She gave me the whole sheet. A high school teacher, she had all of her students take their phones out and turn the alerts on high on their phones. And they all had a Google Doc in front of them. And they had to tally up every time they got any kind of a notification, whether it was, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, text message, Snapchat, and so forth. It was like a laser light show with audio in the classroom, right?
Oh, deafening.
Yeah. And over the course of that hour, there was, something like 1,500 total notifications in that class period. And those kids, when they're sitting, even if they have that phone in their pocket on buzzer, which most of them do, the brain can't do two things at once. So if a kid's sitting there and a teacher's teaching, AP calculus, and all of a sudden every 5 seconds you're getting a notification in your pocket, even though you can't look at it, you also can't listen to what the teacher just said. Impossible. Brain is going to that. Oh my God, who's reaching out?
People mix up this whole multitasking and multi-attention thing. You can multitask, but you can't multi-attention.
Yeah. So even multitasking, right? Task switching, doing one thing to the next. The higher, I have some research in my book on that as well. The higher the level, the multitasker, the more lousy the individual is at multitasking.
So the more they're doing, the less they're getting done.
That's correct. Because the human brain can only do one thing at a time. We can't do more than one thing at a time. It's just not possible.
Man. Okay. So back to the classroom, we've got these parents who are called an umbilical cord. It's like, where are they? Can I get a hold of them? Can they get a hold of me? You and I went to school. We didn't have that problem.
No, because right. And it's not like, and this perception of the world being so dangerous is kind of like, you don't see too many kids walking to school anymore because, parents are afraid of kidnapping, right? And the reason is if there is a kidnapping in the middle of Alabama, we all now know about it all over the country right on our phones, whereas 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have even heard about it. So it creates this perception that there's, a kidnapping epidemic. Yet, statistically, kidnapping is at an all-time historic low, and parents are afraid to send their kids walking to school. That's just an example of, how this stuff gets infiltrated.
Perception of reality versus reality. Yeah,
that's correct. Exactly. Boom.
Okay, so we can't roll back the clock. The cat's out of the bag. Pandora's box has been opened, and your kids got a device. They've got a cell phone. They've got their video games. They have a television in their room. Do you take it away? Do you use that device as a punishment? I mean,
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you, this is a loaded question because I have a concept here, but I think you deal with this all the time. You have kids in your office who are coming to you for help, and you've got to hear kids say, "And my parents took away my phone."
all the time. Mm-hmm. And the parents will bring that up too. It's like it's used as a punishment. It shouldn't really be used as a punishment. It should be a conversation that parents have with their children. And the conversation should be, we're not allowing you to have a television in your bedroom or your phone in your bedroom, and not because I said so, I'm your parent, because here's why. And have
like at all, like you can't take your phone into your room at all.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, again, everything in moderation. It's not even that tech is bad, right? Tech is actually a good thing. It's kind of like the analogy I give too when I'm giving lectures. I'll say, hey, look, I'm not anti-tech. It's kind of like this. If you have a glass of red wine with dinner, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have 9 or 10 glasses of red wine with dinner 7 days a week, now we have a problem. And that's where we're at. It's not really necessarily the tech. It's the 9 or 10 hours a day. Think about that. Just look at 10 hours. That's 70 hours a week. Right now, adults too, but kids, they spend more time in their life staring at a screen than any other activity, including school and sleep. And that's where the problem is, right? The tech isn't bad. We have to greatly reduce it. And that's up to us.
It's like we're using it inappropriately. A lot of our kids are using tech as a toy rather than as a tool.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, it's as a tool, it's useful, but it's rigged against us, especially against our kids, because these things, they know what they're doing. Big tech, all these executives, they don't even allow their kids to use these things. With delayed their own kids and prevented their own kids from using certain social media and so forth. And these are the ones developing this, so they know darn well what they're doing. In terms of like hook, line, and sinkering, our kids' brains into this vortex. And out of reality. I mean, how can you have strong mental and emotional well-being if you're not even thinking, if you're not doing your own thinking, if you're not present, if you don't even know who you are, and you're always somewhere else, and we're just getting bombarded with garbage all day long.
Their brains aren't fully developed, so they don't know how to manage and navigate that, and it's in turn also affecting how the brain is developing.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. You've got a generation of young people today that are spending 9 hours on tech, and now they're 25 and they're in a job.
Yeah, exactly. So interestingly, that you brought up like 25, that's when the prefrontal cortex of the brain is fully developed, right? I see, young adults at my office too. And the silver lining, some good news here that I'm seeing is that these, mid-20s individuals, I've had a whole bunch of them that have come to my office and said, you know what? I deleted TikTok. I deleted my Snapchat and Instagram account because it's sucking up so much of my time, and all I want to do is succeed in my career. So now we're seeing a positive, silver lining in some respects.
Imagine that if a tween or a teen dedicated half of their current screen time to a purpose or a passion. Like if they spend as much time in their music instrument or their sports or their STEM or their pick as they do on social media, what would happen to that individual as they grow mature through their tweens, teens, and early 20s?
If you took a kid and they took half those hours and took batting practice every day instead, maybe they'd be a New York Yankee. Or if they played the trumpet, they'd be in Carnegie Hall. You know what I mean?
All right, let's back it up just a little bit here. I want to go back to the don't take your kid's phone away. We had a rule in our house. I told my sons when they got their devices, I said, all right, here's the deal. It's not your device, it's mine.
Mm-hmm.
I own this, and it is currently on loan to you. And to help solidify that this is mine, not yours, and that I will have access to it as need be. Every now and then, I want to kind of do an audit of how it's being used. I want to be able to have access to your device, and you will gain levels of trust on how you use it. But in order to do that, here's a little contract I want you to sign. This is a contract, and it doesn't really have as much to do with how you use the phone as much as how you interact with others now that you have a phone. If you're disrespectful to your mother and I, if you refuse to leave your phone on the counter when we have dinner, if you take it to bed with you, all the things we've talked about, then you will choose to forfeit your phone. I'm not going to take it away from you. You're going to choose to forfeit it. So I will never take away your phone. You might forfeit it. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I have that in Disconnected, the same exact thing you just mentioned. It's called cell phone contract, smartphone contract. And what you just said is the first tip, which is your phone is not your phone, it's my phone. I'm just leasing it to you for free. And the kid has to sign it. Here are the rules, right? Number one, if the phone breaks or you drop it in the toilet, you're responsible for paying for it. If you violate the rules that we've established, the phone will be removed. But what by doing that, I mean, I prefer delaying them as long as possible. But if you're going to go ahead and do it, set up this phone contract, because now that child has signed this, and anytime they could try to blame mom and dad, but it's their own doing when they fail, and they will fail. There's no question about it. But it gives them accountability.
Gives them a place to practice, a safe place to practice, because there's a point in their life where they go out into the quote unquote rest of the world, the real world, and they have to abide by contracts. And the first time that they sign their name to something, I think it's a shame. It's the first time they sign their name to something is with a stranger we don't even know, or a cell phone service, or a rent agreement, or on a car lease. Why not, parents? We get them the opportunity to practice in a safe place at home first, so they understand, I better read the details of this agreement that I am signing my name to about if I'm going to get to use a phone in our home or not. That's going to translate as they mature up into the rest of their lives. So, okay, Tom, I appreciate that I'm not the only one who think that's a good idea. So what's a space of hope for parents? I know we're not getting devices, phones out of our kids' hands forever. I hear you, and I completely agree with you that they need to learn to manage that time in a healthy way. I ran into some men I see on a regular basis, and they were talking about my son. And we were sitting there chatting it up, and one of them said, man, I saw your son design this logo on his phone in about 10 minutes. And now that is a corporation is using that logo every day. How cool is that he did it on his phone? So in a way, he just was carrying this tool with him in his pocket and was inspired and created a brand logo. So to me, that's a positive context of what cell phones can be used if they're managed well. There's got to be some other good news out there for parents. So
So I think that, honestly, I think the most positive thing is the mirror. Like when a parent looks at themselves in the mirror and says, you know what? Yeah, you know what? My kid's up in his bedroom all the time, right? We don't really communicate in our household, and I'm making that change now. So there's hope. That's the positive thing. There's hope. We have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, this is what I'm committing to. And it's not all about taking things away. It's just about rekindling and reconnecting our families. I mean, what's more powerful than the family unit? There isn't anything.
Nothing.
And that's the key. I mean, when we have kids come from strong, loving families, what are their outcomes? I mean, they thrive in life for the most part. So it really starts there. That's the mirror, in my opinion, is the foundation. We need to look ourselves in the mirror and start to make a commitment right now, and just say, look, I'm in charge of my family. These are the rules. I'm not allowing big tech, to parent my kids anymore.
So parents, perhaps as you're thinking about this conversation Tom and I have had, take a week and do first what you're going to ask your kids to do. Put your phones down when others are around. Be present.
It's the being in the word human being, which is the now, which is the breath of air, which is the conscious present mind. And that's the foundation to everything. That's the foundation of us being in control of our thinking, our emotions, our outcomes. It does start with us. That reflective silent time is critically important. Boredom. I talk about boredom. Boredom is like the miracle grow, for the mind and the emotions. And you take a kid today, they don't even know what boredom is because it doesn't exist anymore.
It is out of boredom creativity springs.
Yeah, that's how we connect. I mean, we're part of, of the whole here, of the universe, of the outdoors. And, and we're not like, we're living in another planet. Like I give an example in my lecture. I show, a lion in a cage, right? And I explain, I'm like, all right, if that lion was born in a zoo, right, and it's like 2 or 3 years old, it can't be released out into the wild because it would not know how to survive in its, quote, natural habitat, right? It wouldn't know how to hunt and so forth. And if you look at our generation of kids, and I do hope I'm wrong about this, if they're spending every waking second, literally, of their life in another planet called the cyber world, right? How do we expect them to thrive and survive in the real world?
Yeah, learning those life skills a little at a time over time means not being distracted by things like tech and media. So I agree with you. Okay, so parents, teach your kids to play. I love the phrase used, Tom, green time versus screen time. More green time, less screen time.
Yeah.
Parents, let's put our own devices down when our kids are around. Certainly when we're driving, no cell phones in the car, not even at stoplights. Don't even check your messages and email. Spend the time with the family, spend the time with yourself. Get to know who you are and let them get to learn who they are as well.
Yeah, self first. Everything starts with self. Like if my, cup is running over, I have something to offer. If I'm empty, I have nothing to offer. So we have to, really, as parents, practice these things on our own and really, experience the depth, the rest of the iceberg of what being is, or what self is, and then lend that to our kids just based on exposure and conversation.
Tom, thanks so much for spending time talking to us today about tech and ways we can help our kids navigate anti-social media, social media, screen time, text time, sleep time, meal time, car ride time. We covered a lot of space here.
Family time.
Family time. Yeah. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you taking your time to share with parents on the Raising Them Ready podcast.
Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining Thomas Kersting and myself in today's conversation about how to reconnect with our digitally disconnected kids. To learn more about Tom's work, his books, or how to schedule him to lecture at your school, church, or organization about tech, kids, and family connections, just follow the links in the show notes. If you're enjoying and learning from this and other episodes of the Raising Them Ready podcast, be sure to pick up a copy of the Raising Them Ready book. It's available wherever you buy your print, digital, and audiobooks. There you'll also find our other best-selling life skills and personal development books and resources for tweens, teens, young adults, parents, educators, and mentors. To learn more about booking me as a guest speaker for your youth, parent, educator, professional development conference, or about my consulting services, please send me a message through our social media pages or email me through our website. You can find, like, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Raising Them Ready Podcast and on our website at raisingthemready.com. Also, please follow and leave us up to a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions about topics or guests you'd like me to bring to the Raising Them Ready podcast, I'd like to hear from you. Just contact me through our social media pages or website, again on Facebook and Instagram at Raising Them Ready Podcast and online at raisingthemready.com. Now, parents, go and enjoy raising your kids ready, knowing your child's greatness tomorrow begins with your guidance today.